for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is Xavier Hayes. And we're going to be discussing his book, Aliens in Ancient Egypt, today. If you want to learn a little bit more about Xavier, you can go to his website at www.xavientvision.com. And he's got some articles on there that I think are very well worth reading. And I think he's either got it on that site or his other site. I know he's got articles on one of his sites that has done a lot of research in the ancient aliens department that anybody that's interested in learning more would want to go visit his site. Now, Xavier, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm in South Beach, and the weather is wonderful. It was kind of cold yesterday, but now it's about 75 and beautiful out, sun out. And the blog, my blog is where I have a bunch of writings on different topics. If you go to xavierhayes.blogspot.com, Xavier Vision is my online metaphysical library, so both worth checking out for if you're curious and you're a seeker. You'll find some good information in both of those sites.
I must have gotten the two interchanged somehow.
That's okay.
Well, I've been to both of them, so I guess that's how you can do it when you don't go back to them in a while.
Right, it happens.
Okay. Also, folks, before I forget, let me remind you, especially you listeners at YouTube and Daily Motion, that I now have my own phone app for Android. For anybody who wants to download it, you can come straight to my webpage, and right smack underneath the chat room, there's a big old button or logo, whatever you want to call it, with says Get Our App, and install that on your Android phone, and you'll be able to listen to the show live while you're traveling down the road through your telephone. Would love to have y'all listen in that way. And of course, naturally, it'd be even better if y'all can come, listen in at the website and join the chat room from time to time so we can get a little fellowship going around here. Xavier, about your book, Aliens in Ancient Egypt, I've actually taken the time to read this here book. I found it to be a very fascinating read. But one of the first things I want to know about this is, what exactly led you into, this particular area to write about?
I've always been interested in ancient Egypt. So, as a teenager, I watched the show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, and that pretty much solidified my interest in these sort of topics. So, I'd always been interested in when I saw the Sphinx and the pyramids, and so it's kind of slow studying. I just kind of on my own would always kind of go back to reading the Book of the Dead or some of the old scrolls and learning about the mythologies, and I just had always a lifelong fascination. So this book is like a culmination of 15 years of personal research, right? Just kind of always checking back into it, and it kind of really started. It really got going with Dr. Carmen Bolter's Pyramid Code documentary series. Once I saw this, I knew right away this is it added the extra fuel I needed for the fire, and I was able to get a hold of Dr. Carmen Bolter, and we initially were supposed to do the book together, and the publisher. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Dunn's work, The Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. You read that one?
No, I haven't read his book, but I have had him on my show.
Okay, well, he kind of points out from the engineering standpoint of how, some of the megalithic structures in Egypt look like saw markings or laser cut markings in them.
Yeah, me and him were discussing those when he was on my show that time, because he was telling me something to the effect of, I believe, if I remember correctly, this has been more than a year back, that electricity had to be used in this design?
Well, I mean, something had to generate the force to be able to, one, cut these stones. I mean, these granite stones, this is impossible to do, especially if you're doing copper chisels and whatever crap they lie to you about. So yeah, and then, he also goes into the whole pyramid Giza field. The pyramids were machines and stuff like that, which I think they were. But yeah, so, looking at these laser cut markings, it was really, really intriguing to me. And the publisher, but when we took it to the publisher, they obviously they wanted the alien question. They wanted like the ultimate book on the alien presence in ancient Egypt, which was great for me because, in my opinion, that's the last real thing that's been covered. So I was all for it. And Carmen, she realized, okay, this is something we could talk about because it was to have her credentials with the book, right? That was going to be the big thing. And then we got Graham Hancock to write the foreword. So we got the big deal with the publishing company, and everything's going to be good. And I'm writing away, and then Carmen's son dies, and her father dies, and she loses her gig as a professor at Calgary, and they won't let her speak anymore. So all this crazy stuff started happening, right? And CIA started getting, erasing people's emails. It was weird phone calls. But eventually she backed out of the project and kind of left me twisted in the wind. And I had to pay back more money than I even received to retain the rights, It was just a nightmare. So, and then, Graham Hancock kind of, once I did it, I finished it, and I got it sold to Intertraditions. Thankfully, a great publisher. I'm so happy to be with them. They did a fantastic job with the book. I mean, there's over 300 pictures, and it looks amazing. I'm so happy. But, Graham Hancock, right? Once we're kind of buddy-buddy, and I was thinking he was going to, at least give an endorsement, or hopefully he'd write the foreword. Like, that's the whole thing I was hoping, because he was going to do it for initially. But then when the project dissolved, there was just kind of me and him, and when he read what I turned in, it kind of scared him, I guess, and he was like, well, this goes against what I've been talking about. I was like, well, whatever, man, it's a new day. You want to still be relevant, you don't have to agree with it, just say something. So he refused to write the foreword, and then he didn't give me an endorsement, which he could have just said a little line or something, right, could have been cool. But then he was like, well, I'll make you the author of the month on my website when the book comes out. So I'm like, cool, that's fine, thank you. Well, when the day came, he was nowhere to be found. He hasn't returned my messages, and so I really heard from him. And I'm like, well, it's been out for a while, and this guy hasn't even written me back. So I kind of said something on his Facebook feed, right? Because there's like a cult of Graham Hancock. Everybody just kind of kisses his ass, right? So I kind of said something. Then he responded, right? And I'm like, whatever, dude. These people, man, they're old school. He basically is writing novels and no one's buying. So the publisher pressured him into like writing a sequel to Fingerprints. So
yeah, I've wanted to interview Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval both on my show, but contacting these two is like not happening. They don't make themselves easily accessible on the web.
They're not, and they're just, and to be honest, dude, Bauval had it out with him earlier, before Graham Hancock, and I'm like, dude, you've been writing the same book for like 10, 15 years. It's just not interesting anymore, man. And they're just they're just like egomaniacs, and they're douchebags, honestly. Because I've dealt with these people, and
so the books are mostly rehash.
The rehashing is what I told Graham. I was like, dude, you're rehashing your old stuff, man. Like, you have to go somewhere different with it. And these guys I used to admire them. Like, they're a big reason of why I am who I am, because when I was a teenager, I was reading all this stuff, and I was influenced to, like, write and do this stuff myself, right? So, I kind of grew up on their work, and then for them to act this way to me is just like, wow, which kind of happens when you meet your heroes, usually. Like, you kind of hear those stories, So, I don't know. It's kind of disappointing, but, I got this stuff I'm doing, so I'm not even, I'm not even worried about it. Like, I'm not the crazy alien guy. This is one book that's, I've been basically building my whole life to do it, and I did it, and I'm promoting it, and it's great. I'm thrilled for it. It's amazing, and, but I'm all about the next one and the next one,
Right. Well, I noticed that in your book, you appropriately enough start with Zep Tepi, the very beginning.
Exactly.
The Golden Age, Zep Tepi. And, I thought that was a very excellent place to start because, that was the time when gods were said to walk with man, or should we say E.T. was known to walk with man?
Exactly. The problem, when I talk with people, I talk to people all the time about things, and especially these sort of subjects, and a lot of the questions they have, especially if they're starting to get into it, and because a lot of people are indoctrinated with religion, Christianity and stuff like this, and it's kind of it's harder to kind of break free from that and to be able to explore new stuff. So a lot of the times I have to explain to people is that, it's okay to believe in God. There is a God, of course. But what's not correct is our misinterpretation of God. See, that's the problem. We got to learn to separate the misinterpretation of God from what actually God is, And once you be able to do that, then you're fine. Then you could go, you go down the rabbit hole and you have no problems at all, And
right.
So Septepi, represents the golden age, and there's been many golden ages. There's, and many different species and different forms of aliens that are, because the Earth is billions of years old, it's super old. And to go back, but when the Egyptians clearly talk about Septepi, and they clearly state on the Palermo stone, okay, and on the keys list right now, if I was going to go to Egypt, go to college and be Egyptologist and spend a bunch of money to get an Egyptology degree, the same list that I have to get the degree from is from the King's List, the Manethio King's List, right? But on that same list, what they don't teach you is actually older. It goes way back before, the pre-dynastic pharaohs, the sky gods pharaohs, way back. But they don't teach you this. They only teach you, we'll start here and don't worry about the other stuff, So how crazy is that?
They start you off, we're at about the intermediate dynasty?
Exactly, the pharaonic. They don't tell you that there was a pre-pharaonic and a pre-pharaonic sky god. They ignore that and they just start 4,000 years ago or whatever, whatever king, I can't remember exactly, but that's how they started you, and it's ridiculous. That same list has a whole bunch of other weird pharaohs flying around, so it's crazy. I'd be pretty mad if I spent $300,000 to be an Egyptologist and they didn't actually tell me that. Oh, wait a minute, they even said they came from aliens.
I know they don't teach you this stuff in school, but all this information you're discussing is readily available in libraries, on the internet, and in bookstores. I've read quite a bit of it myself, and there's connections to the time you're referring to, the pre-pharaonic times when the Egyptians were considered to be Atlanteans. Or actually, they were considered to be Kemetans. But the theory goes that I've heard that when Atlantis sank, a lot of them migrated to Egypt and kind of gave the Kemetans a nudge up the technological ladder.
Which would make sense because they claim that Thoth, 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 was responsible for giving them a lot of their knowledge. And, the early forms, the early writings of him, he wasn't a god. He was actually a man, and he was most likely from Atlantean-type civilization. Because it explains that, he came sort of from the west out of nowhere, and so it's definitely there. For them, basically everything they teach us is just lies, and I think the problem is they've been lying so long, and now they're kind of figuring out well, hell, we're really gonna have to rewrite everything, so let's just keep lying.
Well, I think a lot of it is way back then, before we had all the information we do now. They drew a picture for everybody and put it in school books based on old partial information. And now if they go back and change it, they look like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, because they have to change everything. And the funny thing is, if you read stuff in the 1800s, and man, they knew a lot more than we do now. They were way more open and receptive. And most of those people had accepted Atlantis and those type of civilizations and giants. It was not even a big deal. You know, in my first book, I wrote about Lewis and Clark in pre-Columbian visitations to America, and the giants and stuff, and how that was all basically Smithsonian operation to kind of go with the Darwin, the whole Royal Academies of London, to go with Darwinism and kind of stay away from.
Yeah, you've been talking to Joseph Smith, haven't you?
Yeah.
No, he's got a book out covering the exact same thing you're talking about, is why I said that.
Frank Joseph?
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank Joseph. Oh man, he's cool.
But yeah, he's doing a book on the exact same thing right after you've done it.
Well, Frank's he's a good writer and researcher, and he's kind of like David Hatcher Childress in a way too. We're all in the same type of vibe, like in that little wavelength, to be ahead of the game and to kind of just,
right.
Inspire
and he's a real stickler on details in his research. I mean, he's explicit.
Yeah, and see those guys. And what I liked about when I was doing the first book, talking about, because I came across the Mormon stuff, right? And there's a lot of interesting info there, like the Ancient American magazine and some good stuff there. And I think he comes from that type of background as well. So it's, obviously the Mormon story, like the religion or whatever, is cornball. It's like all religions. However, there are little bits of truth, I think, in everything,
Oh, I'm sure there is. Now, me personally, I tell everybody that I'm a firm believer in God. I just don't believe half of anything any of the religions say about him.
Exactly. I'm the same way. I believe in God, but I don't believe in religion,
I think religions has turned God tried to turn God into their little servant to bring offerings into the plate.
Exactly, and that's what in the book I talk about Akhenaten, the rebel pharaoh who, they try to say he created monotheism.
And that's a pet subject of mine. Akhenaten, Moses, that's a pet subject of mine. And I was going to get around to that, but before we do, I also wanted you to talk a little bit about the pyramids of the Band of Peace, because that one there, that stuck out to me when I read that in your book, because, I mean, all the history books, they never mention these pyramids or their relevance, either one.
Yeah, they seem to miss that, and that's, there's more than, the thing is, it's just not the Giza Plateau, it's a pyramid field, and there's a whole area, that whole area is like a massive complex. And there are other pyramids that, weren't either destroyed or weren't finished, or, half of the top's blown off and you can only see the bottom. And this all has to do with this area in Giza, which had to have been some sort of energy field or some machine working. I mean, this doesn't make sense. You have water, which was pumped into there, right? So there's water that was all in there. There's different types of stone, like granite, black granite, red granite, quartz, there's crystals. All these sort of things had to have worked together and to create some sort of energy field or some sort of machine, I think some people have other theories, but I think, it was some sort of machine to keep consciousness elevated. Because obviously whoever built this understood the cyclical nature of the universe, dark ages, silver ages, gold ages, and, and when the dark ages were going on, I think it was important to keep mankind still elevated and creative during these times. Plus, more importantly, I think that field, that Giza Pyramid field, as long as the landmass is situated as it is, I think there's always been the pyramids or some sort of field there as like a homing device, that can be seen from space. That way other alien cultures and people traveling had, somewhere to recognize and somewhere to go and was communicated. And I think that's always been a base. Like on there, because it makes sense, right? To me, like Earth is Disneyland to aliens, So it makes sense that if you're traveling to this planet, you would need some sort of guiding, like an airport, like a guiding signal to let you know where to go, and I think that's exactly what the Giza Plateau was.
It very well could have been. I mean, God knows it's big enough for it.
Yeah, it's massive and it's ancient. And it's so ancient that, it's before, whatever's there in this current state was there before the flood. So, is that 8,000, 12,000, 15, 30,000? Who knows? But, the evidence is all over the pyramids themselves. There's like seashells and stuff encrusted within it. When Charles Piazza Smith and the early explorers in the 1800s first kind of made their way into the pyramid, they wrote about all the salt, that was all over the place. It's definitely at least that old.
Well, the interesting thing you mentioned is seashell, because you're out in the middle of a desert.
Yeah, exactly. You're in the middle of a freaking desert. Why? And we know that it was a tropical area at one point in time, for many reasons. And plus, even more, like, just because it's tropical doesn't mean you're going to get seashells up in the top walls of the pyramids. I mean, what's up with that, right? Well,
seashell is associated with salt water, not fresh water. If it was tropical, it was probably more fresh water than salt.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not, where would that come from?
Now, they had to import that at least from the Mediterranean somewhere, you would think.
Right, and it's crazy, man. And that's not even talking about the massive megalithic statues and stones and, the unfinished obelisk. We can't even duplicate Stonehenge, which is really nothing compared to what's found in Egypt. So how? And then see, what bothers me too is, if the Egyptians actually built any of this, because there's no evidence they did, at all. So if they actually did it, well, they just forgot. It's not a language. It's actual Masonic stone work. You can't, one generation is not going to forget how to do that.
It's interesting how that nobody's ever found any records about the actual building.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Any other place they'd have to give an accounting in the state records for the spending.
Yeah, everywhere in Egyptian history, they've documented everything, right? Except, like, the crazy stuff. Which, if you kind of read it, they say, like, oh, it's because, it was here before us, and, the gods and all that, right? So, that's why, because they didn't build it.
Yeah, it was built way back in Zep Tepe or before.
Exactly, it was way before them. And even the cultures that came after, they still were, that was just as mysterious to them, because they still like, what? Who built this? Like, can you imagine? It blows my mind to think, like, oh man, I wish I had a time machine so I could just go back and see. Like, who did this? Because, it's not just in Egypt, man. There's all over the world. There's these megalithic, statues and stones that
step pyramids and everything else under the sun. So the only thing about it is, though, the Giza pyramid in Egypt stands out amongst everything else because most other pyramids were step pyramids built with mud, brick, and clay. And these pyramids were built out of huge stones, which makes them different from all the rest.
Yeah, it's obviously it stands out to the point where, whoever did this had to have known it was for it's to stand the test of time. Like, whoever, how would you know? Like, obviously, like, I'm in South Beach and I see these fancy condos and all this amazing stuff. One flood hits, oh, that's toast, man.
It's like the other pyramids are just cheap copycats of the original.
Oh yeah, like the ones that say like, oh, these are the first ones, the experiments and all that. Please, man, they're corny looking, and they're all rubble now. Like whoever built that had to have known this would last, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years.
Kind of makes me think, and I have no proof of this, that the Guys, it might have been built before humankind was around, or humankind as we would know it today.
Yeah, I think so. I think whoever understood this type of technology and how to build it had to have known it was going to stand around for a long, 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 long time. And how's a little joke, ha ha. Can you imagine what these guys would think, thousands, 20,000 years? Who knows? It's crazy.
Now, I read online that some guy recently, just a second, would you excuse me for just one quick moment?
Good.
I apologize. I had a scratch in my throat. I was going to say that one guy recently discovered, in his opinion, basically, that the way they move these here blocks, where they really just put molds up in place and created the actual cement using limestone and a few other materials around there and poured it in there. But now who's to say the guy's right or wrong? My point being, though, even if they had some kind of a cement mixture that they poured in there, who taught them how to do it way back when that pyramid was being built?
Exactly. I think there's definitely some sort of concrete or some sort of that makes sense to be able to. It had to have been dematerialized somehow. It was poured in there or whatever. But again, like, how do they know that, and how would they be able to do it? They wouldn't. It wouldn't make sense. And then, like, when you kind of when NASA analyzed the formation, like what actually is in those huge rocks and the limestone, there's silica that makes up most of the rock, but the silica actually is found prevalent on Mars. So explain that. Like, why do they need to bring Martian silica to?
Or how would they bring it would be another question.
Well, how and why? Maybe because whatever that is the bonding, provided the best bonding when it got hard again. Maybe, but how they got it from Mars? Yeah, that's the crazy question, right?
And let's take your question that you asked a couple of times another step further about your comment, should I say, about whoever built it knew it was going to be here a long, long time. Let's say rather they planned for it to be here a long, long time. Why would they just know if they weren't planning for it to be there? And if so, what purpose would they have in building it to be here a long, long time unless they had a future use for it? And what do you think that future use might be?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I think the whoever built that had to have known that these are something that would be around a long time. And then if something happened to the planet, it was obviously it would still be there. And whoever came after, they'd have to wonder, like, who came, like, why is this here, where this came from. So I think there's definitely a philosophical and a mental reason behind building these structures like this. However, also, I think, it's just logically, like, the pyramid field is a machine, and there was a purpose for that. And I think, the original purpose of this was indeed ancient, and I think it's been around for a long, long, like, whoever understood this had to have known that this is a machine that needs to be here for a long time. And I think what happened now after the last flood, it was just basically decommissioned. Like the physical is there, it just doesn't work like it used to.
Okay. Real quick, I'd like to remind everybody that we'd love to have you at www.talknowradio.com. Also, if you want to learn more about Exavient, you can go to www.exavientvision.com. And he's got another website. Exavient, did you say that was Exavient at blogspot.com?
Yeah, exavienthayes.blogspot.com.
Exavient. I'm saying Exavient.
Yeah.
I'm getting my upper or lowercase mixed up here a little bit. Okay. At any rate, don't forget, you can listen to my show on your Androids now by clicking on the logo underneath the chat room that says Get Our App. I will be working on getting one for iPhone, but I'm finding that a little bit more difficult. In the meantime,
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I've been to both of them, so I guess that's how you can do it when you don't go back to them in a while.
Right, it happens.
Okay. Also, folks, before I forget, let me remind you, especially you listeners at YouTube and Daily Motion, that I now have my own phone app for Android. For anybody who wants to download it, you can come straight to my webpage, and right smack underneath the chat room, there's a big old button or logo, whatever you want to call it, with says Get Our App, and install that on your Android phone, and you'll be able to listen to the show. Is Xavier Hayes, and we're going to be discussing his book, Aliens in Ancient Egypt, today. If you want to learn a little bit more about Xavier, you can go to his website at www.xavientvision.com, and he'll have he's got some articles on there that I think are very well worth reading, and I think he's either got it on that site or his other site. I know he's got articles on one of his sites that has done a lot of research in the ancient aliens department that anybody that's interested in learning more would want to go visit his site. Now,
for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
hello everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is live while you're traveling down the road through your telephone. Would love to have y'all listen in that way. And of course, naturally, it'd be even better if y'all can come, listen in at the website and join the chat room from time to time so we can get a little fellowship going around here. Xavier, about your book, Aliens in Ancient Egypt, I've actually taken the time to read this here book. I found it to be a very fascinating read. But one of the first things I want to know about this is what exactly led you into, this particular area to write about? Xavier, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm in South Beach, and the weather is wonderful. It was kind of cold yesterday, but now it's about 75 and beautiful out, sun out. And the blog, my blog is where I have a bunch of writings on different topics. If you go to xavierhayes.blogspot.com, Xavier Vision is my online metaphysical library, so both worth checking out for if you're curious and you're a seeker. You'll find some good information in both of those sites.
I must have gotten the two interchanged somehow.